doesn't work, but hey, hasn't been done yet. So when you're going to tell your story, plan it out ahead of time. I talk to other authors that are halfway through a mystery novel, and I'm reading it for them and going, you know what? I have no idea who does it. Let me in on a spoiler alert so I can kind of help with foreshadowing. And they're like, I don't know who the villain is yet. I'm like, you can't tell a cohesive story if you don't know the ending.
Yeah.
Because you're driving. When you tell a story, you are the bus driver on this short bus, and your readers are along for the ride. If you don't know where you're going, they're going to be lost too.
It's called an outline. Have one first.
So plan it out, okay? And I said be the bus driver. The second point is actually be the guide, okay? Your job is not, I'm just along with them. I'm as interested as they are in the story. That's good. Be caught up in your own story. And if you do create really good characters, some of the scenes should actually literally write themselves.
I was just gonna say
Because
that.
your characters take on their own personality that's not you.
Be willing to let inspiration flow
And
into
they're
your
going to
story.
work through that. But you need to have an outline, a formula, a direction, an end result that you're heading towards. One of the problems with a lot of modern horror movies that are out there is in their attempt to be original and change and do a flip at the end that catches you off guard. They'll do something random
That makes
that
no
doesn't
sense.
make any sense, and it's not really foreshadowed.
Same
The-
time clip.
Yes, and the best way to tell a story is to tell a story that has an obvious plot twist at the end, but your storytelling is so compelling, the audience is going along for the ride, and they're not using critical thinking. So when they get to the plot twist, they're like, oh my God, how did I not see that? Because it made perfect sense, but you were so caught up in the... We're going back to horror movies, which has nothing to do with her style of writing, but did anybody see the doll movie Dead Silence? Dead Silence was a really underrated horror movie. It was directed by the same guy that did The Conjuring.
I love that movie.
Dead Silence, my wife is up for watching every horror movie that I put in and ignoring it most of the time, but she hates doll movies. Even Chucky bothers her.
Yeah.
Dead Silence was the creepiest doll movie ever. And if you haven't watched it yet,
Watch
Dead
it.
Silence is
watch it. Dead Silence is amazing because it is creepy enough and scary enough that it sweeps you along, and at the end, when they do the plot twist reveal, it was so obvious in retrospect, and you watch the movie a second time, I'm like, oh my God,
How did I not see that?
that's so obvious. This could have been written by a kindergartner. But the storytelling was so well done, I missed it completely. As soon as I watched that and saw the plot twist, I immediately went out and went to a store and bought it. Because it was just that, which tells you I watched it online. Not that I ever admit to that. But it was amazing. And so when you tell your story, plan it out ahead of time. And be the guide. You're directing this and showing, you've got to drop those little hints. That when somebody comes back, and because you want them to read your story again. Okay, the best book you've ever read, do you only read it once?
Heck
Or do
no.
you have stories that are your go-to thing? I have comfort movies. Sounds dumb, but I'm having a bad day, I don't feel good, it's late at night, I can't sleep, so there's movies that I'll just put in and lose myself in because Texas Chainsaw Massacre brings me peace. I'm joking about it, it's not one of those movies.
Still a good movie.
no, it's actually The Notebook.
The Notebook? Really? And that's okay, this is half a chick panel.
And keep your work consistent.
Keep your work
Yeah.
the same. Have you ever read somebody's story where they'll not just change like tense, where they're going from a first-person narrative to third-person because they want to tell a backstory that the main character couldn't know? That's really bad story killing thing. You lose it, but you also lose your voice. If you're writing a story for a middle school age level, and then all of a sudden you start telling a story on a college graduate level, unless your book is so long that your middle schoolers
Or growing up with the
grew up with the
Yeah.
story, so by the time they get to the end of your book, they're in college. That's really not the way to do it. You want to keep the work the same. Same rules, same laws, same characters. The characters shouldn't change halfway through the story. Personal growth is one thing, but changing characteristics is kind of a bad thing. Which brings us to our next point. Go, Morgan.
Okay, word usage.
You're on.
No pressure. Okay.
No pressure. Yeah.
I personally like descriptive detail when I'm writing because when I'm reading as well, I like to have those details because I want that moving in my head. Okay, I want to know what is this outline looking like? What are the characters looking like? But I don't need to tell you for 40 pages what a tree looks like. Don't go nuts. I've had books I've read do that, classic books.
You're
Don't
miserable.
do
You
that
drown.
much detail because we all have to use our imagination. So I need to give you that outline, be that guide, and then from there you can kind of fill in the little holes for my character in the scenes. So good descriptive detail and imagery, but don't go crazy. When I first started my publication process 4 years ago with Spirit Vision, I wrote this when I was 15, okay? I was 24 when it got published. So I evolved quite a bit. I had a lot of adverbs. And my publisher goes, let me highlight all your adverbs for you. I'm like, it can't be that many. Yellow, 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 yellow. I'm like, oh God. So I had to go back there and, just tighten up my sentences. And it was amazing how much that made it sound more professional. So you want descriptive detail, but again, you don't want to overkill it. Because if you describe too much, you're going to just confuse your audience. Figurative language, personally, is my best friend. I love metaphors and similes, hyperboles, stuff like that. But again, it depends on the writing style. Young adult tends to go more of that route. Adult, I guess, would depend, because you're more of the adult. Okay?
It's not often I'm the one accused of being the adult.
But you had good descriptive detail in your book as well, so that's important.
The point about
Obviously,
adverbs
yes.
is a big thing. You want to be descriptive,
Absolutely.
but one of the problems you run into as a storyteller is you try to describe the wrong thing when using the right word in the first place would help. You don't say, when you're writing your sentence, if you're running from a serial killer, today's all about horror. If I'm describing the actions, I shouldn't say she ran quickly. Describing how she ran, she's running from a serial killer. Use the word sprinted. Because sprinted implies that she's not jogging, which is a way of saying run slowly. But it's using one word instead of two. Use the proper words to tighten the action and still convey the same kind of meaning. Again, you don't want to get bogged down in details. Did anybody read Lord of the Rings? Remember the second book? Do you remember when the hobbits were lost and when they met the Ents?
Yeah, in the end.
I read that series for the first time when I was in 4th grade. I was 10 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I swear the Two Towers took me 6 years to read.
Yeah.
In reality, it was 2 weeks. But it felt like it was 6 years because that section with the Ents, and it was intentional. He wrote it that way because that's how they lived. And it's how they talked, and it's how they deliberated. And he really sold it well. And that's why I'm using it. I'm not being critical of one of the greatest sci-fi works in history. It's just that everybody knows it. You can relate to it. That section took forever. And so you have to watch doing that because it worked in that case. But if another sci-fi series, did anybody read Dune? We like sister. But
Yeah.
We need to check our ancestry.com
You still need to
thing.
respond to that friend request.
But Dune was a great visual landscape, but the book was so long and so
And there's
dry,
so many of them. There's so
which is
many of
okay
them.
because it's a desert planet. But you really have to be a patient reader to get through it. And my dad is the one who turned me on to reading in the first place. And he's a voracious reader. He tried 4 times to get into Dune and read it, and could never get past the first 100 pages because they were still describing the planet they landed on. And I read it as a personal challenge that if my dad couldn't read it, I was going to read it. And it took forever, but then when I finally did, it was worth it.
Yeah.
You just have to
but
get through it, literally.
Word usage is really important. Okay, go ahead, sorry.
That's okay. No, we're collaborating. Dialogue also is huge in word usage. How your characters talk that speaks a lot about their personality. Haha, that was unintentional fun, but okay.
Still counts. 13.
Oh, yes.
You have one now.
We're not keeping track of mine. My wife keeps track of how many times I'm offensive to women.
You have one today.
I quit counting a long time ago.
Don't blame you. But
I'm offensive to men too.
But dialogue, like for my three main characters, for example, Starry is your normal, 15-year-old girl in high school. Lauren was raised to be very ladylike, very proper. There's no contractions, and just by reading her dialogue, you understand like, oh, she's very proper. She gets flustered easily when people fight. Umber, on the other hand, is just fist fights and saying cuss words. Again, that describes his personality. So dialogue tells a lot about the character, and how they interact with each other also talks about it. Before I even have to describe them as a narrator.